Hey, what up, guys? Welcome to The Cult. The Cult is my regular show that I do Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, where we talk about, well, really whatever I want to talk about, whatever crazy nonsense is going on in the world on any given day. And we've got an old friend. We have an old friend joining us today in the form of Robin DiAngelo. Hey, Maria. Robin is so much more than a racist. She's a plagiarizing racist. Well, I don't think that any of us who have been following Robin for any period of time have been surprised. Robin was my gateway drug into the woke left. Robin's actually an anomaly on the left. She really is. I mean, and this is part of the problem, right? Robin DiAngelo is part of why the right thinks that whiteness and white supremacy are about skin color, because Robin DiAngelo really, in real fucking life, is a racist white lady. And I'm not talking about like the type of racist that the Groypers are, which is they're not really racist. They don't hate black people. They don't hate brown people. They just don't believe in race mixing. So they think that like you shouldn't be blending the races. And you can agree with that or disagree with that, but they really don't hate anyone. I've seen them around black people and they don't care. And actually, like I've told this story a million times. When I was at AFPAC, which is Nick Fuentes' event, I was standing right next to Bryson Gray for like a good half an hour at the bar. He was there with his wife, and I saw Groyper after Groyper come up to him, go, "Bryson, I love you. I love your music," and da 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 da. So I'm not talking about that type of like they just don't believe in race mixing. They don't hate anyone. That's not what I'm talking about. When I say Robin DiAngelo is a racist white lady, what I mean is Robin DiAngelo is a racist white lady. She does not like black people. And we know this because in her book, she says this over and over again in her book, White Fragility, which I did read the whole thing. I read it all so you guys wouldn't have to. You can find a video from years ago on this channel where I broke down, I descended into madness in the reading. I read White Fragility in one day, and it was rough, and it drove me insane. And then Robin followed up White Fragility with another book called Nice Racism, which is her basically yelling at progressives about not being like anti-racist enough or whatever. But in both of those books, Robin talks about like personal stories of like, I don't like being around black people. I get scared of being around black people. I don't want to be around black people, and that makes me a racist white lady. And Robin thinks that because she is a racist white lady, that all white people are racist. And she says this. She said it over and over and over again in her speeches. All white people are racist. And when Robin says it, it's not like other people on the left. And this took me a long time to figure out. When Robin says it, she is actually referring to skin color. When most people on the left, and I say this for people who might be new to me, I say this from watching literally thousands of hours of far left training over the past 3.5 years, almost 4 years now. The vast majority of people on the left, when they're talking about whiteness, white supremacy, those sorts of things, they're not talking about skin color. They're talking about private property ownership. They're talking about capitalism. They're talking about who owns the power structure. They're talking about systemic racism, not individual racism, because they're not individualists, they're collectivists. They're talking about systemic racism. Systemic racism means the system that upholds racism. You might also call it institutional racism, the institution that upholds racism. That institution, that system is capitalism. They say this over and over and over again. People who watch my content have seen them say this over and over and over again. Robin DiAngelo never got that memo. So Robin DiAngelo, because she herself does not like black people and is afraid of black people, and again, she has literally written this in her books. She wrote about one time how she showed up to a potluck dinner at a park, and there was a black family that was setting up for a potluck dinner at a park, and Robin was afraid that that was the one she was going to because she didn't want to hang out with black. I swear to God. So she is basically projecting her bullshit onto everyone else. And when she calls everyone racist, that's because she's racist. And this is why the numbnuts on the conservative right believe that whiteness is about race and skin color rather than about capitalism, which is what it is about. We're not even going to get into the dissident right. That's a whole other thing. And that's a different thing. We're going to talk about that a different day. But yeah, apparently Robin DiAngelo plagiarized her dissertation, which is what we're going to talk about today. Did you see Libs of TikTok post where they said queer rapper in Seattle, and they were rapping, and Libs of TikTok said only queer rappers say shitting on politicians? It's almost like Libs of TikTok. It's almost like she pretends not to get it because she plays stupid to make money on the internet. So close. So close. No, Libs of TikTok would never say that because that would out them. That would out them. Anyway, guys, we had a lot of things to talk about today. Hey, guess what? I'm streaming on Kick right now. I didn't actually, like, I don't know if I'm going to do this show regularly on Kick. I tried. The reason I'm streaming on Kick right now for the first time ever, and I think I'm kick.com/carlinb, something like that. Hang on. If you're on that cursed website, here's where you can follow me. If you want to watch on there. I don't know exactly what my streaming schedule is going to be on Kick. Listen, here's what happened. Yesterday, I premiered my new show called Something Controversial over on Rumble. Something Controversial is like a late night show. And it's basically, I'm watching controversial videos on the internet. You can see right here. Last night, we watched The Greatest Story Never Told, Part 1. And I say Part 1 just because we watched like 2 hours of it. It's like a 6-hour documentary. I think we're going to be continuing on with it later tonight after Nick's show. But I tried to stream it on Kick last night. This is a Rumble exclusive. This is Something Controversial is not going to be on YouTube because I don't want to lose my YouTube channel. So we're only doing it over on Rumble. But last night I tried to stream it on Kick for the first time, and for some reason it wouldn't work. And I was like, what? There's like 2 steps to setting up streaming on Kick. And it's like, you just put in your information. It's just supposed to work. And it didn't work. And I tried updating. I tried fixing it. Didn't work. So today I was troubleshooting it. And apparently I figured it out. And I thought, why don't I just stream the 5 p.m. show onto Kick? And that way I can figure out if I actually can stream on Kick. So hi, Kick. I don't know if you and I are going to have a good relationship, Kick. I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know if my type of streaming is going to work well on that platform. But you know what? We'll give it a shot. We'll give it a shot. I'll give anything a shot once. I think Something Controversial is a much better fit for Kick than my normal kind of like 5 p.m. stream, The Cult. But, you know, I guess why not try? Why not just try? Why not just see how it goes? Yeah, so we're streaming on Kick. Hi, Kick. Nice to meet you. Let me just get my super chat goal up here. There we go. If you want to contribute to my stream and keep this feasible for me to do, please feel free to send in super chats throughout the stream. I would really appreciate it. Hey, Leonard. Leonard said, can you check on my t-shirt order? Leonard, you should be getting it tomorrow. I just checked. It has shipped. It should be in your mailbox tomorrow. So if your t-shirts have not arrived by tomorrow, you let me know. What is Leonard talking about? Leonard ordered some t-shirts from my merch store, which is unwokeart.com. Because I got a lot of sweet new designs in the merch store. We've got the socialism skull. We've got a couple whiteness means capitalism designs. We got a new socialist always lie design. This might be like, they're all my favorite. Of course, all these designs are my children. I do all the designs, but this one might be my favorite. This one, just something so obvious in the form of a t-shirt or a mug or a pint glass or a hoodie. I'm going to get it on a hoodie myself. I'm going to get it on a hoodie and I'm going to cut off the sleeves to the hoodie. So it's like a sleeveless kind of vest, but it still has a hood and the design's going to be on the back. I'm really looking forward to that. Does Kick do super chats and ad revenue? Well, Kick monetizes through subscriptions, but I don't even have enough people. I literally have never streamed on Kick before, so I don't have any followers or anything. So I'm not like, you can monetize on Kick. I'm not there yet. So if you want to send me a super chat on YouTube or Rumble, you can do that. Another way you can support the work I'm doing is by heading over to the Unwoke Art merch store. That's unwokeart.com. Find the link in the description below. And of course, you can always head over to my Substack. And this is actually my preferred method of support. If you can only support me in one way, you're like, Carlin, you have like 19 different ways we can give you money. Like, and I need one. Okay. I'm going to give you one. Go to my Substack. That is Carlin, KARLYN.substack.com. You can sign up as a monthly supporter for $8 a month. You can sign up as an annual supporter for $80 a year. You can give me more money on there if you want to, but you don't have to. I mean, if you want to, that'd be nice. I'm not going to complain or nothing. But $8 a month, $80 a year. And this is my primary content hub on the internet. It's where I do all my written breakdowns at the far left. I'm working on the re-education series right now. I got a little sidetracked because of the DNC, and there was just a lot to cover with the DNC. But we are going to be doing the re-education series over on the Substack. And of course, you do see my new Unwoke Roundup email that just came out today. This is where you're going to get all of your supporter perks. So when you support my work over on Substack, you get access to a variety of things, to include 2 Zoom calls with me every single week. The Monday Zoom calls are back. we've had to cancel the Monday Zoom calls for a little while just because I had other things that I needed to do. I had other stuff I needed to cover at the same time. So our Monday community Zoom call is back. We are going to be meeting at 7 p.m. tonight Eastern time. Those Zoom calls are private. They are unrecorded. They are only available to supporters on my Kick and in my locals community. If you want to join locals, that's fine too. I post the links there. How do you find the link to the Zoom calls? You head to the Unwoke Roundup email. You scroll all the way down to the bottom and you will find the links to the Zoom calls. You will also find the link to the supporter Discord where we do movie night every single Sunday night. There's also writers group in the Discord. We've got an Unwoke zine project going on in the Discord. Lots of stuff going on in the Discord. We're going to be doing a cool little project with the Unwoke zine project coming up where I want to do a whole, let's just say I want everyone to go to a local college campus and bring some materials and leave them there. And that's all we're going to say right now. We're going to do a nice little subversive project coming up now that school is back in session, college is back in session. So it's time to be a little subversive, I think. More on that to come soon. But anyway, support the work I'm doing over on the Substack, and I really, really, really do appreciate it. Also, last thing, please make sure you are following me on Telegram if you want notifications when I go live. That is t.me/unwokex. And that way, if you want notifications when I go live, especially for those late night streams where I don't always know when I'm going to be doing something controversial. I don't have a set schedule right now. And so if you want to be notified when I go live, then download Telegram, follow the channel, and you can get a nice little notification when I go live, or you can follow me on Twitter or whatever you want to do. But that is another thing you can do as well. Hey, I'm Jack. Thanks for the super sticker. I really do appreciate it. Let's add it to our total here. Bing, bang, boom. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Has everyone mounted the like button for me? Mounting the like button lets YouTube know to recommend my content to more people. If you don't feel comfortable mounting the like button, you can tag the like button if you want. You can high five the like button if you want. You can give the like button a pat on the ass. You can give the like button a kiss on the cheek. I don't really care what you do to the like button as long as you do something to the like button, because that's how I end up not getting shadow banned permanently on YouTube. And I would, really, really appreciate it. All that stuff. Hey, look, my first ever chat over on Kick. Popping that Kick cherry. ADR Jacko took my Kick virginity. See, I appreciate it, bro. I appreciate it. Welcome. I hope this Kick thing does work out. It's always nice to have a different platform if people will actually subscribe and follow and interact on it. I don't know. Chesscom Support says, should we do anything to the dislike button? No. Don't do anything to that button. Stay away from that button. That button is bad news. Doing anything to the dislike button is like sticking your dick in crazy. It's not a good idea. Just stay away. Pretend it doesn't even exist. Turn your back on it. Ignore it. Nothing needs to get done there, all right? All right, we've got one story today, and we're going to be talking about Robin DiAngelo. Because Robin. And if we have some extra time, I do actually have a relatively recent interview that Robin DiAngelo did with C-SPAN talking about her book, Nice Racism. So we might get to listen to a little bit of Robin in action today. But I have to say, I was not at all surprised when Aaron. Listen, I say a lot of times, if you can find any journalist that's broken more original journalism, broken more original stories than I have over the past 3 years about what's going on the left, please tell me who they are. And I have to say, not Andrew. God damn it. Why do I keep calling him Andrew? I actually really like Aaron. Aaron is a really good journalist. I keep fucking up his name. It's me. It's not him. I swear. Aaron is an excellent journalist. Aaron is with the Washington Free Beacon, and Aaron might have actually broken more stories about the left than me over the past couple of years because he just does really, really good work. Now, Aaron has a whole bunch of people around him. He's not an independent journalist, so I still feel like I get a little credit there. All right. But Aaron is a wonderful journalist. I highly recommend people follow him. He does really great work. It's pragmatic. It's nuanced. And he doesn't go for the cheap kind of clickbait and stuff like that. That's really what I'm looking for when I'm looking for people who are doing journalism about what's going on the left. I don't want outrage bait. I don't want clickbait. I want receipts. I want to know what happened. I want to know someone was thorough. And Aaron has always done that, and he's just really, really good. So I highly recommend people follow him. Yeah, it's because I have like 900 different Andrews in my chat. So I just confused him. But I have a lot of Aarons in my life too, for some reason. I've dated multiple guys named Aaron. It wasn't just the one that went to prison. I've dated like 2 other guys named Aaron. I feel like I'm surrounded by Aarons. Never female Aarons, although I did have a female Aaron friend growing up. But like the Aarons I'm around are almost all men for some reason. And there's a lot of them. I don't know why. It's like me attracting Virgos for some reason. They're just like, it's like moss to a flame. I don't understand it. Not that kind of Aaron. Aaron, not errand. I know my Vermont/Boston accent sometimes gets in the way. Anyway, let's see what Aaron found. New, Robin DiAngelo tells her fellow white people that they should always cite and give credit to the work of BIPOC people who have informed your thinking. But it appears she has plagiarized numerous scholars, including 2 minorities, in her doctoral dissertation. And then he starts to provide receipts here. And listen, Aaron has broken a lot of this plagiarism stuff. I think he worked on the Claudine Gay stuff at Harvard. This is tedious work. I don't envy him at all in this affair. So it looks like Robin says Tiffany's identity as European is an enactment of symbolic ethnicity, citing the same person. Symbolic ethnicity allows individuals to identify their European heritage while giving specificity to whiteness that it does not hold alone. Let's see what it says over here. Finally, a small group of whites interviewed and surveyed saw their whiteness in relation to European ancestry. This historical foundation for their ethnic identities reflects an interest in what Gaines has earlier identified as symbolic ethnicity. Holy shit, Robin really did plagiarize this. These individuals recognize their European heritage and give it a specificity to whiteness. It means I am descended from European white people. By the way, this is the definition of like when the left believes that white people were created when Europeans brought slaves to America. Essentially, they say this in like the 1619 Project and stuff like that. They believe that white people did not exist before slaves came to America, which of course is not right, but we're talking about what they believe, okay? Because before white people brought slaves to America, they identified by their country of origin, like English or French or Irish or Spanish or German or any of those things. But once they brought black slaves to America, they created white people as the diametric opposition to black people, white people being the stand-in for the property owner. That's why whiteness means capitalism, because whiteness is a reference to private property owners. Black people are a reference to private property, the owned, the oppressed, the proletariat. So it's this perpetual class struggle, right? You got the bourgeois versus the proletariat, the owners versus the property, the oppressor versus the oppressed. That's what they believe. Yep, they're saying slavery collectivized their identity on both ends, both white and black. Exactly. Hey, Pack Shakur over on Kick. See, I've already got 2 Kick chats. See, this Kick thing is going great so far. Awesome. Let's see. Robin writes, in this way, white gains particular meaning and positive marking that can be self-chosen. White means I am descended from Europeans. Well, this discourse recognizes in part a historical constitution that does not necessarily indicate that there is a recognition of the power relations, that's what I just explained. Maybe Robin does understand this. The power relations, that's oppressor versus oppressed. Embedded in history. Let's see what it says over here. Well, this discourse recognizes a part of its historical constitution, white of European descent. This reflexivity does not necessarily mean that there has been a recognition of the power relations embedded in history. It says exactly the same damn thing. Robin really did plagiarize this. Holy shit. Waters, 1990, this is Robin, found that many whites selected their ethnicity according to interest and convenience, i.e. identifying as Irish on St. Patrick's Day. I mean, I identify as Irish all the time. It's just I just wear more green on St. Patrick's Day and use it as an excuse. I don't Doesn't everyone identify as Irish on St. Patrick's Day? Like, isn't that the rule? And that it was not a sustained part of their daily. That's not true. Being Irish is an everyday part of my life. Waters argues that symbolic ethnicity persists because it meets a need of white Americans for a community without individual cost. A potential societal cost of this symbolic ethnicity, however, is its subtle reinforcement of racism. And then the other one says, in a more recent study of symbolic ethnicity, Mary Waters found that many whites selected their ethnicity, much as one might associate with a wardrobe. Well, I don't believe that. Ethnicity for them is not a substantial part of their everyday lives. Waters notes that symbolic ethnicity persists because it meets a need Americans have, like Robin added, white Americans, for a community without individual cost, and that potential societal cost of this symbolic ethnicity is in its subtle reinforcement of racism. Wow. Listen, guys, I have written a doctoral dissertation, okay? It's really not hard not to plagiarize. It's really not. You can take ideas from anyone. You just have to rewrite it in your own words. Like, and if you do quote someone directly, just put quotes around it and give credit. It's truly not that hard not to plagiarize. I don't get this. Yes, it seems like both Robin DiAngelo and James Lindsay are as bad as Claudine Gay. Exactly. ADR Jacko over on Kick asks, are they arguing whiteness is performative? Well, they're arguing that whiteness is an indication of who is in the power, the oppressor position. They're arguing that people can choose people choose to identify as white. So again, this really isn't, I know this seems like a reference to skin color. I really, really do. But this isn't actually a reference to skin color. In some ways, you're right that they are saying that whiteness is performative because they're literally saying people choose to identify as white based on when it's convenient for them to do so. So I hope that makes sense. Let's see. Looking over on Rumble as well. See, I've got multiple chats set up now. I have to monitor like 3 different chats on 3 different sites. I'm going to get used to this. It just takes a little extra. All right, let's keep going. People always call me when I'm live on the internet. When you use a phrase or an idea you get from a BIPOC person, DiAngelo says, credit them. But according to a complaint filed last week within the University of Washington, where DiAngelo received her PhD in multicultural education, she hasn't always taken her own. So there was holy shit. So someone filed an official complaint about this. Robin done pissed people off. Hey, Ravens Poetry over on Kick. Good to see ya. The 2004 dissertation, Whiteness in Racial Dialogue, a Discourse Analysis, lists 2 paragraphs from an Asian American professor, Northeastern University's Thomas Nakayama, without proper attribution. Well, that's okay, though. Do you know why that's okay? Pop quiz in the chat. Who understands why it's okay for Robin to crib passages from Asian Americans? There is actually a reason for this. Robin is allowed to steal from Asian Americans. Does anyone know why? Chat in your answers. Yup, Asians are white adjacent. Asians have whiteness. Asians have ascended to whiteness. That's right. There are several groups that Robin DiAngelo specifically believes has ascended to whiteness. She believes the Irish have ascended to whiteness, the Italians have ascended to whiteness, and of course, the Asians have ascended to whiteness. That means they're basically white, which means they are not oppressed people. Asian Americans are considered to be the token minority on the left, which means they're the ones that have their shit together essentially. And the left doesn't like this. The left is like, the Asian shouldn't be the token minority, which basically means the minority that all other minorities should look up to. So they basically say none of this oppressor racism stuff counts towards Asians because they're not oppressed in the first place. Look, Asians do good in school. Asians get good jobs. Asians own businesses. We don't need to worry about the Asians. They're not oppressed, except when it's convenient. Because remember, there was a whole Asian American hate campaign a couple years ago when this massage parlor got gunned down or something, and the guy killed like 4 Asian ladies, not because they were Asian, but because they worked at a massage parlor and he had a sex addiction. But that sparked a whole Asian stop Asian hate campaign. So for that brief moment, Asians were considered oppressed. And then, do you know what happened? And then what happened after that is what was it? I think it was the day that Derek Chauvin was found guilty. The day that Derek Chauvin was found guilty, Asians were suddenly no longer considered to be oppressed because they went back to like black people being the thing they were focused on. Anyway, it's really all, yeah, Asians break the narrative. Exactly. So Robin is allowed to steal from Asians, probably according to her. Let's see. Tiffany's identity as a European is an enactment of symbolic ethnicity, Gaines, 1979. Symbolic ethnicity allows individuals to identify their European heritage while giving a specificity to whiteness. White means I am descended from Europeans. While this discourse recognizes in part a historical constitution, this does not necessarily indicate that there is a recognition of the power relation. See, again, Robin keeps referring back, and of course, Robin's plagiarizing this other dissertation over here, but I just want to reference it to make the point. They keep saying in this dissertation that white means descended from European, and then they keep making the point, but they're not talking about the power relations. Because the way that Robin DiAngelo and the people that she's copying from think about the world isn't necessarily in terms of skin color. They think about it in terms of oppressor versus oppressed, bourgeois versus proletarian, private property owner versus private property. That's how they think about it. So that's why they keep bringing up power relations over and over and over again, because they're really not thinking about skin color. They're thinking about who owns the property, who has all the money, who has all the resources, who is the private property that is owned, slaves, who doesn't have resources, who doesn't have money, and what is the dynamic between them. If anyone has questions about that, let me know. The person Robin copied from said, finally, a small group of whites interviewed surveyed saw whiteness in relation to their European ancestry. This historical foundation from their ethnic identity reflects an interest in what Gaines has earlier identified as symbolic ethnicity. These individuals recognize their European heritage and give a specificity to whiteness. It means I am descended from European white people. While this discourse recognizes a part of its historical constitution, white of European descent, this reflexivity does not necessarily mean that there have been a recognition of the power relations, blah, blah, blah. Got the power relations thing again. Exactly, Bot. They think of everything as a hierarchy. So the left wants to get rid of all hierarchies, right? They want everyone to be on the same level. That's what equity means, that everyone is on the same level. And so they think of everything right now in terms of like a hierarchies. Capitalism creates all hierarchies. White people over black people. White people being symbolic of the private property owner. Black people being symbolic of the private property. If we're talking about gender, men over women, men being in the workplace and having all the power, having all the money, women in the home doing the unpaid labor, raising the next generation of proletarian workers, that is the nuclear family. If we're talking about sexual orientation, heterosexual versus see, it used to be gay or lesbian, and now it's not really that anymore. It's more like, I don't even know what it is anymore. Like pansexual, whatever the fuck. So heterosexual versus like anything that's not heterosexual, however they might be defining that on any given day. Gender could be cis heteronormativity versus queer. So what they want to do with Marxism or equity is they want to level out the hierarchy across all these things. So make white the same level as black, make men on the same level as women, make gay people on the same level as straight people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what that ends up doing is we all turn out to be the same, which doesn't really seem ideal to me, but that's what it ends up doing in practice. All right. Moving on. Robin writes, Waters 1990 found that many whites selected their ethnicity according to interest and convenience. We've already read this. These two are the same. I don't know why he put this in here twice. Can you explain how they view capitalism has created a hierarchy in gender? Sure, Connor, I can do that. So essentially, and this will be old news to people who are not new to my content, but Connor's relatively new, so we're going to explain it for him. Everyone else just sit tight. Everyone can always use a review. What the left believes, and I'm not saying I believe this, I'm explaining what they say in their trainings over and over and over again. What they believe is that capitalism, which is defined as private property ownership, created the gender binary. The gender binary means men and women. That's it. There are two genders, there's men and there's women. They believe that capitalism put men in the workplace where men had all the access to all the power and all the access to all the money. It put women in the home where they were charged with doing the unpaid labor of raising the family, otherwise known as the next generation of workers that will be oppressed under capitalism. That's why the left wants to destroy the nuclear family. They believe it's literally the birthplace of capitalism. So the hierarchy that capitalism created, and this, by the way, is also referred to as the patriarchy. The hierarchy that they created is men are over women because capitalism put men in the workplace and it put women in the home where they had to raise the family. That's the hierarchy. In order to flatten the hierarchy, it's not just about women going into the workplace. They want to abolish the gender binary entirely. So they want to get rid of men and women entirely. This is why you see non-binary. Non-binary means no binary. It's people who are not identifying as men or women. Once they get people to stop identifying as men or women, that's when we achieve gender equity. Because if you just get rid of gender, there's no more hierarchy. Hope that explained that, Connor. Yes, social reproduction. Social reproduction theory is the idea that social systems will reproduce themselves until they're disrupted. In this case, capitalism created the gender binary. The gender binary created the nuclear family. The nuclear family is the reproduction mechanism of capitalism. They believe that if they don't disrupt the nuclear family, then they will never be able to disrupt capitalism. So all the attacks you see on parental rights, that's a direct attack on the nuclear family because they believe they need to disrupt the nuclear family in order to overturn capitalism. Hope that makes sense. Let me know if you have questions. By the way, if you guys understand what I just explained, you know more than like 95% of people about why the left does what it does. DiAngelo also lifts material from Stacy Lee, an Asian American professor of education at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, in which Lee summarizes the work of a third scholar, David Theo Goldberg. Goldberg. That's an interesting name. Goldberg. DiAngelo says, Goldberg 1993 argues that questions surrounding racial discourse should not focus so much on how true stereotypes are, but how the truth claims they offer are a part of a larger worldwide worldview that authorizes and formalizes forms of domination and control. Again, domination and control is the power structure. Lee wrote, David Theo Goldberg argues that the questions surrounding racial discourse should not focus so much on how the true stereotypes are, but on how the truth claims they offer are a part of the larger worldview. This is just lazy cheating. And what forms of action the worldview authorizes. This is just lazy, 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 lazy cheating. This passage creates the impression that DiAngelo is providing her own summary of Goldberg rather than using Lee's language. Yes, it does. A misleading move that Peter Wood, the president of the National Association of Scholars, likens to forgery. It is never appropriate to use secondary source without acknowledging it, and even worse to present it in one's own words, said Wood, a former Boston University provost. Oh, something good came out of Boston University, my alma mater, okay? who led several research misconduct probes. That's plagiarism. Will they take her degree away? I doubt it. She'll probably just get like a reprimand or something. I strongly doubt they'll take her degree away. It's been so long since she got. I mean, maybe they will. I don't know. I guess it's supposed how. I suppose it's dependent on how bad the scandal gets. More to come. The complaint describes dozens of cases in which DiAngelo, who rakes in almost $1 million a year in speaking fees, passed off the work of others as her own. It's got all, look at all these instances. Holy shit. Robin. It calls into question the key credential on which DiAngelo built her career, which has relied on the notion that her therapeutic workshops, which can cost up to $40,000, and insists that all white people are racist, are backed by scholarly expertise. Okay, now here's the reality. Here's the reality check that I want to give everyone. I've been a keynote speaker. Not as high priced as Robin was, but I've been in that industry. I was in corporate training for a long time. I had my own corporate training business. Some days I still dream of going back to corporate training because I can make more money than what I do here. Because the reason you can make more money than what you do here is like places will pay astronomical sums for like corporate retreats or facilitations or keynote speeches or whatever the F. The point I want to make is that, and people are not going to like hearing this, even if Robin DiAngelo loses her PhD, it won't mean anything in terms of the money she is able to rake in from corporate training and keynoting. Okay? Because they want her for the name. They want her for the book. Now, if this scandal really blows up and it makes a lot of press, that's going to be a big problem for Robin. But the thing is that Robin really hasn't been active in a couple years. Like, she kind of went away. She became a very inconvenient person for the left because she kept going around saying all white people are racist, all white people are racist. And so they kind of replaced her with Ibram X. Kendi. First of all, because Ibram X. Kendi was black, and that's more convenient than an Italian white lady, right? But oh, we've got disruptors. There we go. Banning you. But Robin DiAngelo hasn't really been around in a couple of years. And so do I think that, I mean, maybe this will blow up into a big scandal, but if it doesn't, and it's just like this one article, I strongly doubt that's going to actually inhibit Robin's ability to make money, because people who like Robin are going to look at it and they're going to go, oh, they were just coming after her because they hate what she's doing and they're just jealous and blah, 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 blah. And they're still going to pay her the big bucks, maybe a little bit less, but still the big bucks, you know? Well, no, this was part of her dissertation. This is her dissertation, apparently. Well, so socialists don't want hierarchies. So the reason that socialists talk about hierarchies is that they don't want them. They want to eliminate them entirely. They're like pointing out the problem. Robin DiAngelo isn't a socialist, though. Again, I talked about this earlier. You guys have really got to take Robin DiAngelo with a grain of salt, because she is an anomaly when it comes to like far left training. She's just one of the more out there people. Robin is a do-gooder progressive that is also racist. She's just kind of like this. Robin is like a wacky character. Well, I mean, she is a grifter, but like, I really do think that Robin believes the stuff that she says. She's just a wacky character. She's a white lady who is legitimately racist, legitimately does not like black people, doesn't want to be around black people, is afraid of black people. And she projects her racism onto everyone else. But she's an anomaly insofar as like leftist training goes. I don't know. I don't think we can characterize Robin as a useful idiot, because I think she is a true believer. I just think that, listen, guys, there's always going to be There's always going to be people that have a fucked up perspective on the world, right? There's always going to be people that are just like crazy and they believe everything they say, but they're crazy. And that doesn't mean that everyone on their team is crazy. It just means they're crazy. And I think that Robin is like the exception to the rule. Robin is an anomaly that's a crazy white lady that calls all white people racist because she herself is racist and she just makes for really good clickbait fodder. And that's why we all know about her, essentially. But I believe that she does believe everything she says. Anyway, let's keep going. No one who respected the basic expectations of scholarship would do this, said Steve McGuire, a member of the American Council of Trustees and alumni and former professor of political theory at Villanova University. The amount of copying of verbatim language without quotation marks or clear and consistent citations in these examples is appalling. The doctorate has become a centerpiece of DiAngelo's marketing. I don't think that that's true, but okay. Her website, Robin DiAngelo, PhD, refers to her as Dr. DiAngelo, notes that she is a professor at the University of... See, this is a bigger problem. That's a bigger problem for Robin. That she is a current professor at the University of Washington. She's probably going to lose her job over this. And states she coined the term white fragility in an academic article in 2011. The first use of that phrase actually came in her dissertation, where she formulated the concept that would define her career. White fragility. Guys, can we please stop using this as an own? This is the... I talked about this on Twitter earlier today. This is the dumbest fucking own that conservatives have. It literally says in the Communist Manifesto that socialists are allowed to engage in capitalism as long as they are doing so to survive within the system that they're in, and that they are working to overthrow capitalism using the system against itself. It literally says this in the Communist Manifesto. Every single time you guys point out, well, they're capitalists, they have a really... This is what it was on Twitter today. That person has a really expensive computer and it says smash capitalism on it, and therefore they are massive hypocrites. No, they're not. No, they're not. It literally says in the Communist Manifesto they're allowed to do this. So, dumbest own that conservatives have. Dumbest own ever. They're using but again, Robin DiAngelo is not a socialist. Robin DiAngelo is a crazy progressive. But they're using capitalism to destroy capitalism, simple as. Yep, the appeals to hypocrisy do not work ever. Ever, ever, ever. The complaint suggests that the paper responsible for these ideas violated bedrock scholarly norms. DiAngelo, for example, copies a page of material from Kristen Gates Cloyes, her classmate. She copied from her classmate. Wow. Robin done fucked up. This is like almost a verbatim. Look at this. Robin says, Guy 1999 provides a consideration of validity within discourse analysis that includes 4 elements. 1, convergence, whether or not an analysis, blah, 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 blah. 2, agreement, blah, blah, blah. Anyway. Oh my God. Excuse me, guys. Excuse me. All of the stuff in red here is taken verbatim from her classmate's paper. This is literally just a copy paste. This is like Robin asked someone to like look over their paper, and when that person wasn't looking, Robin just stole the whole thing. Yo, that takes some balls right there. This is worse. So what we've seen up until this point is like Robin cited sources from another paper without sufficiently rewriting them, which is bad, but it's not as bad as just copying and pasting from someone else's paper. This is actually the worst thing she's done. She lifts another page from Debian Marty, an emerita professor of communication at California State Monterey Bay, keeping the structure of the passage the same while swapping out synonyms and details. Wow. Again, this is just like, this is a copy paste with a couple additional words added. Wow. Turnitin.com defines this sort of splicing as mosaic plagiarism, in which a source's phrases are interspersed, uncredited with one's own. Plagiarism need not be intentional, the University of Washington states, and I don't know is not a defense. Once an obscure professor at Westfield State University, DiAngelo emerged in 2020 as the high priestess of progressive racialism. True. Her most famous book, White Fragility, published in 2018, flew off the shelves following George Floyd's death, beating out How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi, a black man, on the USA Today's bestseller list. DiAngelo has become a staple of teacher trainings, corporate affinity groups, fundraisers, and anti-racist book clubs. True. She even addressed 184 members of Congress, including then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, about what it means to be white, telling the Democratic caucus in 2020 that its members would continue to hurt Black people until they reckoned with the question. The talk was one of the myriad of speaking engagements that launched DiAngelo into the top 1% of American earners and helped her afford 3 houses worth $1.6 million. At one of those houses, this is what I'm saying, Robin doesn't like Black people. At one of those houses, a cabin in rural Washington state, DiAngelo has been photographed relaxing with groups of friends who, by all outward appearances, are exclusively white. Because Robin DiAngelo does not like Black people. Last week's complaint was part of a wave of plagiarism allegations unleashed by the resignation of Harvard University's Claudine Gay, who stepped down in January after half of her published works were found to contain plagiarized material. Subsequent complaints targeted diversity officials at Harvard, Columbia, MIT, UCLA, and the University of Wisconsin-Madison. The allegations range from mild sloppiness to copying huge chunks of text without attribution. DiAngelo falls on the severer half of the continuum, lifting longer chunks of text than some officials, including Gay, displaying telltale signs of deliberate plagiarism. Robin is kind of fucked right now, I'll tell you what. Like I said, I actually think that Robin, unless this blows up into a real big scandal, I think Robin is still going to be able to get speaking gigs and stuff like that, but she's going to lose her professorship. There's no way. Not with it being so clear that she's copying and pasting just huge chunks of text with no attribution at all. She's going to lose her professorship. Though she cites all of her sources in her bibliography, DiAngelo omits quotation marks, footnotes, and other forms of attribution that would mark off her words from her other sources. And while a verbatim quote could have been copied accidentally, she often tweaks her source's prose, suggesting she is aware of what she is doing and intentionally misleading others. In this sentence taken from Queen's University's Cynthia Levin Rasky, for example, DiAngelo changes just one word. You can't do that, guys. Yep. So as a professor, your one job is to make a contribution to your field. Even if your ideas turn out to be wrong, stealing is also wrong, but plagiarism hasn't. Well, as a professor, your job is to teach. But when you're writing a dissertation, the whole point of a doctoral dissertation is that in order to achieve a doctoral degree, you have to make a contribution to your field. Your doctoral dissertation is not supposed to be the same as other things that have been done. It's supposed to be unique original research that actually contributes to the overall field of academic knowledge. And so if Robin is just copying and pasting huge chunks of her dissertation, that is not allowed. That is not allowed at all. It could be one of those signatures of a habitual plagiarist in which a minor change is meant to either throw people off or to justify the pretense of taking one's words for oneself. It shows that DiAngelo was fully conscious of what she was doing. Um, People make a bigger deal out of this than there actually is. Like, listen, they're okay. The reality is this: PhDs are the original doctorate. PhD came before MD. PhD came before EDD. PhD came before everything. So PhDs are the original doctorate. I have a PhD. Anyone who says that a PhD is not a real doctor, fuck you. PhDs are the original doctors. But what I will say is I don't actually think that there's as much difference between a PhD and an EDD as a lot of people do. Generally speaking, an EDD is usually a shorter frame of time. It's more like a professional level PhD, but this is a distinction that almost always is honestly just not worth making. There are really smart people who go through EDD programs. There are really dumb people who go through EDD programs. There are really smart people who go through PhD programs. There are really dumb people who go through PhD programs. If you're saying that one is fundamentally better than the other, I disagree with that. It's like, what is your goal? What are you doing it for? Because, like, if I wanted to work in higher education administration, the PhD I got in psychology would not be as good as an EDD. If my goal was to be a college president, getting an EDD would actually be better for me. It just depends on what your goals are. No, if you can do an EDD, you can do a PhD. And by the way, guys, anyone can do a PhD. It's really just a matter of like, do you want to read a metric ton of research and write a metric ton of papers? And conduct your own research. I mean, that's really it. Like, it's not getting a PhD is hard in that it requires you to read an astronomical amount of literature. It requires you to synthesize a lot of information, but you do that in the course of the reading of it. And it requires you to spend a lot of time writing papers. It's not functionally an impossible thing. The biggest factor in getting a PhD, at least for me, I did my PhD while I was working full time. Like, the biggest factor in getting a PhD is the time that is required to read all the materials and to write all the papers. That's it. And so anyone can do it. If you are willing to work at it, if you're willing to spend the time that's required, you can do this. If you're not willing to do it, you can't do it. Simple as. PhD in ed means they have both qual and quantitative methodology in dissertation and defense. Either at EDD means qual or quant. I mean, I don't agree with that. I did a qualitative dissertation, and I did have a dissertation defense, and I had a comprehensive exam and all that stuff. But like, I didn't have to do qual and quant. I could do either. I think it just depends on the program. Anyway. A similar case involves two sentences from Browden Davies, a professorial fellow at the University of Melbourne, and Rome Hare, a deceased philosopher and psychologist. Robin copies the sentences almost verbatim, tweaking a word here or there to avoid exact reproduction. Again, just massive amounts of copying. It does look like plagiarism, Davies told the Washington Free Beacon. Other scholars named in the complaint did not respond to requests for comments. Too Long didn't read. The most famous diversity consultant in the country plagiarized numerous scholars, including two minorities, over the course of their doctoral thesis. Sounds like she had a bad case of white fragility. So there we go, guys. There we go. Robin has plagiarized her PhD. So it will be interesting to see if anything comes of that. I want to move in because we do have some extra time. I want to listen. Do you guys want to listen to a little bit of Robin? Contemporary Robin. This is an interview that Robin did with C-SPAN rather recently, like 4 months ago. Let's hear what Robin's been up to. Let's hear what she's doing now that she's got her plagiarized PhD. There we go. This was an interview that was published on C-SPAN's YouTube channel 4 months ago. Oh, look at this. 1.4 million followers, only not even 1,000 views. Poor Robin. Poor Robin. Let's listen to what Robin had to say.
The most exciting part of a vacation stay at a home rental? Easy. It's being greeted upon arrival with
home rental. Go away.
Need for electricity.
No commercial.
Author and
is
there we
tension
go.
between class. Yeah. So I want to begin with. It seems like a basic question, but it's a moment in the book.
Hang on. No, we are not watching the Matt Walsh interview. We are absolutely never doing that. I am never promoting Matt Walsh on my channel. Matt Walsh is a grifter. I don't care how funny you guys think this is. If you want to go watch the Matt Walsh interview, you can do it in your own time. Matt Walsh is not a serious person. Matt Walsh has lied over and over and over again to millions of people. Matt Walsh is part of the fucking problem. So no, we're not going to be doing that here. I'm very sorry to disappoint.
Where you were actually dealing with the kind of tension between class and race, and you told your story. And I thought it really important to kind of begin with your journey to this work. Talk a little bit about
yes,
you,
talk about your journey, Robin,
and the way in which your upbringing shapes how you approach anti-racist education.
Sure. I'll talk about the aspects of my life and upbringing that I think is so relevant to the work that I do today. Two pieces, and one I'm not sure I write about in the book, and that is that my mother died when I was 11 years old. She died of leukemia. This was the late 50s, early 60s. At that time, you didn't talk about those things. It probably seems shocking to people today, but cancer was a shameful thing. And we were told not to speak about it. And when she died, we were told not to, not to talk about it afterwards either. And so it was a traumatic experience for me, but I don't think it had to be that traumatic if we had been able to talk about it. I was 11 years old. And so from an early age, I couldn't have articulated it this way at that time, but I did understand the relationship between silence and suffering. There was this huge elephant in the room, and by God, I couldn't talk about that then, but I'm going to talk about this elephant now. I also grew up in poverty because my mother was a single mother. She was struggling with this cancer. She couldn't keep a job. She couldn't keep us housed. We were often left with strangers for long periods of time. She couldn't keep us fed or bathed. I'm quite sure that I wasn't clean as a child. And I had a lot of shame. And I'll never forget that moment that all of that crystallized for me when she took up.
Robin DiAngelo was raised in like a relatively wealthy part of Northern California. Robin DiAngelo was not raised poor. I'm sorry. This idea that Robin DiAngelo was unclean and like all this, like bullshit, Robin. Bullshit.
My sisters and I to visit another friend, some friend. And as often happens when the adults get together, the children begin to play, and we were playing. And then it came time to leave, and I was the last one out the door. And I overheard one of the little girls ask her mother, "What's wrong with them?" That is the literal question she asked. What's wrong with them? And I stopped, riveted. I wanted to hear the answer. And her mother went like this, "Shh, they're poor." And I won't ever forget that moment. I even feel chills now because it was when I realized, okay, there's something about us that's shameful and everyone can see it, but nobody should speak of it. And I share that because when I realized much later in life that I participated in somebody else's oppression, that was unbearable to me. I cannot know the Black experience, but I can tap into the shame of poverty.
Hang on. People are calling. I don't think that she's a narcissist. I'm sorry. I just don't. Just because someone is a wacky person doesn't mean they have a personality disorder. I don't have maybe everyday therapist disagrees with me, but I don't think Robin has a personality disorder.
Poverty and discrimination based on being poor, and not want to contribute in a form of that for anybody else.
Isn't that her maiden name, though? She's married. Isn't that her maiden name?
I also always knew I was white. And I just have to look at white people who are poor or working class and say they don't have privilege. And I have to say, come on. I always knew I was white. I always knew it was better to be white. And in fact, we used Black people to ameliorate some of our class shame. I can remember being hungry, being out in public in a park and seeing food left out and reaching for that food and being admonished not to touch it because you don't know who touched it. Could have been, the language of the time was colored person. Don't sit there. You don't know who sat there. Could have been a colored person. And the message was clear. Had a colored person touched that, it would be dirty. Now, I was actually dirty. But in those moments, I wasn't poor anymore. I wasn't shameful anymore. It was a form of projecting our dirt and shame onto Black people. And it was the way that we aligned ourselves, or I would say realigned ourselves with the dominant white culture that our poverty separated us from. I don't have less racism because I grew up poor. I just learned my place in the racial hierarchy from a different class position than I would have learned it had I been middle class. I would have learned it there too, just different lessons would have come home to me.
So, I mean, I thought it important to begin there, to kind of give a sense of your own journey, the way in which you use your biography as a way to disrupt a kind of in some ways, false dichotomy between class and race, which is the most important, which is epiphenomenal in life. But I think it's important that we start with your story, right? That there's a journey to this work. Now, talk a little bit about, before we get to the actual book, Nice Race, talk a little bit about how white fragility changed your life. I mean, this book has been this the former book was this extraordinary hit, New York Times bestseller, #1. How has it transformed you? Because a lot of the stories in the new book.
Guys, listen, like people keep bringing up like psychology and like, the reality is that we don't have enough information to diagnose Robin with anything. Just because you see someone doing something you don't like doesn't mean they have a psychological problem. It doesn't mean they have a personality disorder. It doesn't mean we can diagnose them with anything. Like there are very like if I ever am diagnosing someone, which I do on occasion, if I'm ever diagnosing someone, it's because I have more than enough information based on personal interactions with that person, based on a lot of things they've said. I'm not just taking one thing and saying, this is the epitome of everything. If I diagnose someone and if I say, Candace Owens is a narcissist, she has narcissistic personality disorder, which I really shouldn't do, and I'm not a clinician. I'm not making a clinical diagnosis. I'm offering an opinion, but I have extensive knowledge of bullshit Candace Owens has pulled behind the scenes. I have extensive knowledge of stuff she's done publicly, and I've weighed a lot of factors, and it's not something I do likely to say Candace Owens has narcissistic personality disorder. With Robin DiAngelo, I don't have that type of information, and you don't have that type of information. We just don't have it. Yeah. Well, you're a clinician. I'm not a clinician. So I'm offering an opinion, which I feel like I'm allowed to do because I'm not a clinician. I'm not making any sort of clinical diagnosis. I don't feel like I have to adhere to that ethical guideline because even if I was acting as a psychologist, it's just not the type of psychology that I do. So I'm offering an opinion, but I have to have a lot of information to be able to offer that opinion. I really wish that people would stop diagnosing people that they don't like or people that they disagree with mental health conditions based off one or two things that person does that you don't like. Because the fact of the matter is that you don't have access to a lot of information that might completely contradict whatever diagnosis you make. Just because someone does something you don't like doesn't mean they have a mental health problem. Can we please start to be more nuanced than that?
come out of your travels around the country
Oh,
doing
wait.
this extraordinary work.
Elena sent in a super chat. Sorry, Elena. Sorry. Apologies. There we go. Pathological liar for the grift then? No, I don't think she's a pathological liar. I think that she has certain life experiences that lead her to see the world in a certain way, and that I think she believes everything that she says. There's always more than one way to look at things, guys. I think that Robin DiAngelo has a very specific point of view. I also think Robin DiAngelo has made a metric ton of money because of her point of view. So of course the money she's making is going to reinforce the point of view because everyone around her is reinforcing it. So again, I don't like, and I'm not a defender of Robin DiAngelo. I don't like Robin DiAngelo. I don't agree with her at all. But I also just don't like this extreme thing of I don't like this framing of it. I appreciate you, Elena. I appreciate the money, but I don't agree with that framing. Well, is she though? Is she? She plagiarized her dissertation. Okay, that's fine. And I don't agree with that, obviously. But what background is causing her to do the work she's doing? She's done extensive corporate training. She's done extensive speaking. She's written multiple books. She was the #1 New York Times bestselling author for 87 weeks or something like that. So again, it's I think she should lose her professorship. I don't think Robin DiAngelo ever should have become famous in the first place, but it's also not intellectually honest to say that because she plagiarized a paper, that wipes out everything else that she's done on her resume. It's just not true. Do you see what I'm saying? It's
around anti-racism education.
Like a lot of white people, particularly white people who experience a form of oppression in their life. Of course, we don't experience racial oppression, but we experience other forms.
Hang on, got a super chat from Andre. Exactly, just because she is illiterate on self-defense skills, it doesn't mean she's a narcissist, maybe unskilled. I mean, I think Robin is, like I keep saying, I think Robin is just a progressive, racist white lady. It doesn't really need to get more complicated than that. I think she's a progressive, racist white lady.
And for a lot of us, we've thought long and deep about how unjust life is for us. But rarely, I was in my 30s before how I ever considered how I benefited. And that in a large part, my whiteness allowed me to navigate my poverty. I didn't go to college until I was in my 30s. But of course, once I got there, I fit in. I was reflected everywhere by all my teachers.
I mean, the most likely possible explanation, if we're honest about it, is that Robin's mother fucked her up. That's a much more likely explanation. Robin has mommy issues. Robin's mother fucked her up. Robin's mother emotionally fucked with her. Robin's mother maybe had some sort of I don't want to say she had Munchausen's by proxy because I don't know, but something like that, where Robin's mother was putting her internal bullshit onto Robin, and that screwed her up for all time. That's probably what happened, which is a sad thing, honestly.
By the curriculum, and I graduated not knowing what I could do and got this position as what we called in the 90s a diversity trainer. And I've been doing this kind of work now for about 25 years. I went on to get my PhD. I've been writing and publishing on racism and white racial identity for decades, but mostly in academia. And I know you're an academic, and you know that, does anybody read the peer-reviewed articles we write? Sometimes, maybe grad students. And I had written the article, White Fragility, about the frustration of trying to talk to white people about racism. So being a diversity trainer, going day in and day out, going against my socialization, which, most white people are taught not to talk about racism. And every day I walked into rooms filled with white people and say, we're going to talk about racism. Most often standing side by side with a Black co-facilitator who was the only person of color in most of those rooms, and just being stunned at the hostility to the conversation, at the meanness. I mean, we can be really mean on this topic, and driving home with that co-facilitator and bearing witness is part of being white, is never having to bear witness to the pain of racism on Black people, and rarely being held accountable for the pain that you cause Black people. And so that experience plus academia kind of brought me to be writing. And somebody somewhere quoted from White Fragility, the article, and it exploded. I apparently captured in language a dynamic that's been familiar, certainly to Black people, but also, once I named it, familiar to white people. And it's harder to deny a shared experience. So I was getting emails from around the world about that article. And I knew that it would be useful to develop it more further and to make it accessible, because it's an academic speak. We know how to do that. It's not my favorite way to write, but you kind of have to do it in academia. I wanted to make it accessible in more plain language. And so I went to a non-academic publisher, a nonprofit social justice publisher, Beacon Press. I knew there would be an audience for the book based on the reaction to the article, but who could dream? It's still on the list. It's been 3 years. Who could dream of that? I wasn't prepared for the depth of backlash from all sides of the spectrum. I expected it from the right. You expect that. That doesn't really get to you in the same way. But I didn't expect it to that degree from the left. And so that's been a process.
So that's interesting that you didn't expect it from the left. And there's a sense in which the left is not, I wouldn't want to say it too, I don't want to generalize too much, but they're caught within the crosshairs of this book. Mm-hmm. There's a sense in which I remember this moment with James Baldwin when he was testifying before Congress with Betty Shabazz. And he said something to this effect, that he was skeptical of the white liberal. Mm-hmm. He's skeptical of those who wanted to do something for him as opposed to with him. Yeah. And he had seen how white liberals had responded to the Cold War, to the McCarthy era, how they betrayed. So there is this deep suspicion in Baldwin's corpus, and you cite Baldwin, as well as Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail at the very beginning of the book. So say a little bit about nice racism. What is this? And who are these people who are the nice racists that you're talking to?
The progressive.
Well, it's me. We have to start with the basic foundation of systemic racism. So let's just proceed from that premise that racism occurs in explicit acts, but it's actually...
I mean, do you think there will be a day when standards for higher education will be lowered or dumbed down to the point that this degree of plagiarism is considered acceptable? I mean, isn't it already? People get away with plagiarism all the time. This is not unique. This stuff happens all the time in higher ed. All the time. And so the point of higher education is not, it's not a pure academic pursuit. It never has been. It's about getting a credential. It's about getting published. It's about getting letters after your name. It's about getting a professorship. It's about getting the keynote slot. It's about, it's about prestige. It's about clout. That's the point of education. That's always been the point.
A structure that's infused across society. And it is the norm. It's not an aberration. It's reproduced 24/7, 365. It's a highly adaptive system. Look where we are with voters' rights. We thought in 1965 we'd settled that, and we're in a very serious place right now. So it adapts to challenges, and it keeps on keeping on. And so if it is a system, we are all shaped by it. We are all shaped by it. And so for those of us who are white, we have to change our question from if I've been shaped by this system to how have I been shaped by it? You cannot be exempt from the cultural water that you swim in. And so nice racism is meant to capture the well-intended white progressive.
I mean, I'll say this. When I did my PhD, it wasn't only my advisor who read it. I had to go through like several different levels of people who read it. I had to defend I had multiple dissertation. I had 3 different dissertation advisors. They all had to read it. I had to defend my dissertation to them. I had my primary advisor, but I had like 2 other people too. I had to go through a whole editing process where it was run through these plagiarism checkers over and over and over again. I think I had to go through like 2 different levels of that. So I don't know how other universities run, but I had to go through like at least 5 different people before my dissertation was approved.
The moderate who is more concerned with a lack of conflict, who's more concerned with comfort and saving face than racial injustice. You know, there's so much hand wringing about white people feeling guilty. For me, that's a great example. You know, oh my goodness, white people may feel something unpleasant in looking at racism, and we're going to compare that to what we watched in front of our own eyes this summer with George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and so forth. So the reason I say that the white, in King's term, it was moderate. I think in Baldwin's, it was liberal. Today we say progressive. I actually think we do the most daily harm. And I don't want to speak for you. You can correct me or if I misspeak. But odds are on a daily basis, you're not interacting with white nationalists. And if you are interacting with white nationalists, you're aware that that's who you're interacting with.
White nationalists
in some ways, you know how to protect yourself.
I do.
On a daily basis, especially in academia.
And to be honest, Robin, I find the white nationalists that I interact with on literally a daily basis to actually be more tolerant of Black people than Robin DiAngelo is. The white nationalists I interact with, like on a daily basis, are more tolerant of Black people than Robin DiAngelo, because they don't actually care if people are Black. They just don't want to race mix. They don't care if people are Black. Yep, Groypers are better. The Groypers, ironically, are less racist than Robin DiAngelo.
You are most likely interacting with colleagues just like me. And we are the ones that send you home often exhausted. Those 1,000 daily cuts, that maddening, insidious, I can't get my fingers on this, but yet again, we've reproduced racism in our outcomes, in our hiring, in our policies. So it's the more subtle. It's the smile on the face. It's the gaslighting. It's the denying.
South Carolina's economy is growing.
All right, fast forward.
Yeah, in just a condensed version, guilt is generally what you feel about something you've done and feel responsible for. And shame is generally something you feel that you inherently are. So guilt is I did bad, and shame is I am bad. And my area of scholarship is discourse analysis. And so, you know, language is political. Language is not objective. It's not neutral. And language shapes perception.
Wow.
And so I'm very attentive to how we frame conversations and how we position ourselves in conversations.
So Robin is highly aware of using language to advance political ends. I know we're all shocked by this revelation.
And I notice that white progressives, those who would voluntarily attend a a talk or watch a video like this, we'll pretty freely talk about feeling shame and I don't know what to do. I feel so much shame, but not guilt. And that's interesting to me, right? That's worthy of note. Haha, this is a pattern. And as a sociologist, I think patterns are rich sources of insight. So how does it function? If I feel guilty, I'm responsible for something, and reparative action would be to somehow address what I have done. If I feel shame, I just am bad and there's nothing I can do. I'm absolved from responsibility. And shame tends to elicit sympathy, support. If I say I feel so ashamed, I'm such a bad person, most people around me are going to reassure me. No, nobody should feel shame. We're all inherently good. This is a pretty popular progressive mantra. And so it functions in the environment in ways that actually, I think, garner more social capital.
Yeah, in some ways, I think you used a formulation like the fact that I feel badly actually establishes that I'm actually a decent person, that I'm a good person, right?
Yes.
But what's interesting is
does Robin feel bad about her plagiarism?
In certain kind of political theorist circles, it's the absence of shame in our politics that represents a certain kind of problem, right? So Chris LeBron writes about the fact that Trump, people thought that shame could actually move Trump around, right? And there's a sense that there's no feeling of shame. That on the right, it's the absence of shame that allows them to do X, Y, and Z. And it seems to me, after reading Nice Racism, it's the prevalence of shame on the left. I know this is too binary, but it's the prevalence of prevalence of shame on the left that actually enables, in certain interesting sorts of ways. So I found this talk about the feeling of guilt as really, really a kind of critical intervention. Because there seems to be always, at least in my work and in my conversations, I'm not in the zone that you're in by any stretch of the imagination, but there's this sense in which we cannot sit in our discomfort, because we find ourselves not only feeling guilty but feeling shame, and feeling this sense that we're not in fact decent, and then that gums up the works, as it were. We can't get to where we want to get to.
Yeah, well, shame is a very unpleasant feeling. So with guilt, shame is probably worse. But can we, buck up? Can we bear it? Can we build our capacity to feel it and move through it? And that's the key. There's a question that has never failed me in my efforts to unpack. How do we keep getting the outcomes we get? Virtually every white person you talk to, even those who are caught on camera engaging in racism, will claim that they're not racist.
Right.
So then how do we keep getting racism, as what Eduardo Bonilla Silva calls racism without racists?
Right.
So the question that has really served me in trying to figure that out is not is this right or wrong.
So Robin's proof that all white people are racist is some white people do racist things. Does that sound like a PhD level analysis? Some white people do racist things, or even not even pure racist things, but just things that Robin doesn't like and that Black people don't like. And therefore, all white people are racist. And if you deny that you're racist or you don't have shame for being racist, that is proof of your inherent racism.
Is it right or wrong that you feel shame? No. That we could split hairs over.
Well, no. As I explained explicitly earlier in the stream, Andrew, and I actually explained this twice earlier in the stream, Robin is an anomaly because Robin is not a radical revolutionary socialist. Robin is a progressive. B, when Robin says skin color, she actually does mean skin color. She's not referencing, unless she's talking about systemic racism, she's not referencing the institution of capitalism. She really does mean it. But she is an anomaly in this regard, which I've already explained twice in this stream, and you think you're owning us by doing this, but you're not, because there are exceptions all the time. But the fact of the matter is that most people on the left do not have the same perspective as Robin.
Forever. It's how does it function? And how does it function in this context? And if it functions to motivate you to build your capacity, to move through it, to change the way you understand what's being said, well, then it's functioning in a constructive way. But if it's functioning to excuse your inaction, to be the reason you don't engage, to cause everyone around you to walk on eggshells and be so careful and don't say this and don't say that, well, then it's functioning to protect the racist status quo.
So chapter 5 stood out to me. It's the longest chapter in the book. And it is a detailed accounting of what you call the moves of white progressives. And I found it fascinating, beyond from credentialing to outwoking. And I was thinking about outwoking in the context of some of the debates we saw in the Bernie Sanders campaign. Between Bernie Sanders, the campaign, and Black Lives Matter, or some of the conversations we overheard with Occupy Wall Street. Right at the very moment Occupy is taking off, Black Lives Matter is taking off, and we were wondering, some of us, why weren't these things coming together? It's like abolitionism and free soil. Why are they going in separate directions in interesting sorts of ways? Talk a little bit about the moves of white progressivism and why you thought it was so important to lay out, because I didn't have language to say, oh, that's what.
I'd like to know more about CRT, as you mentioned the other day on Twitter. That has nothing to do with race, but I don't want to change the subject. So no, I can answer this this very briefly. Critical race theory is about is essentially about framing the oppressor-oppressed narrative within a racial context. So what the left believes, not Robin is the exception to this. We need to take Robin and we need to put her in her own little box over here. What the left believes, though, for pretty much everyone else talking about this subject, is that capitalism created the institution of slavery in America. Capitalism being private property ownership. Slavery is an institution in which people are owned as private property. When Europeans brought black slaves to America, that is when white people and whiteness were created, because it made the white people the private property owners, the bourgeois, the oppressors. It made the black people the private property, the owned, the oppressed, the proletariat. When you hear references to whiteness, white supremacy, that is what it's referencing, because they say that prior to white people bringing slaves to America, they referred to each other. They were referred to by their ethnicity. So like French or English or Irish or Spanish or like whatever, German, whatever. And so when they came to America, they created white people based on needing the separation from black people to differentiate the owner, the private property owner, from the private property itself. The institution of slavery then created systemic racism or institutional racism. When the left is talking about racism, they're not talking about skin color. They're not talking about the race part. They're talking about the system part. Systemic racism means the system that upholds racism. Institutional racism means the institution that upholds racism. The system is capitalism, because the entire institution of slavery, which again is the ownership of people as private property, was created based on the need for profit motive that was created by capitalism, which is defined as private property ownership. That's why when critical race theory is talking about race, critical race theory is not focused on the individual. Critical race theory is focused on the collective, the system. It's talking about the system that upholds racism, the system that creates the oppressor and the oppressed, the system that creates the bourgeois and the proletariat. That system is capitalism. That's just fact. This is why Larry Elder can be the blackface of white supremacy, even though Larry Elder is very black. This is why Kanye West can be considered a white supremacist. This is why Jay-Z is considered a white supremacist. This is why the Washington Post, NPR, has articles talking about multiracial whiteness, because they are not talking about skin color. They are talking about people who are in the oppressor role versus the oppressed, the bourgeois versus the proletariat, the system that upholds racism. Yes, they do ignore that, Teresa. We've talked about that before. They ignore that.
What that was, or fascinating. Yes, that seems familiar to me. Talk a little bit about that chapter and lay out why it's in some ways.
Yes, they do.
The heart of the book in some ways.
Yeah, and I appreciate.
Why do people think that Jay-Z is a white supremacist? Because he's an entrepreneur. Because he's rich. Because he engages in capitalism, private property ownership. He has more resources than anyone else.
You, if I understood you correctly, acknowledging that it resonated. You've experienced these moves. You've been on the receiving end of these moves. I am an educator, and I think one of the things that I'm effective at is breaking it down and showing what it looks like. You know, here's how I can help you understand what you're doing and how it's functioning. And so if the book is about the ways in which we perpetrate racial harm, then I need to make that very, very clear. And I've been observing it, receiving it, participating in it. I'm not outside anything that I write about for 20 plus years. And so I just wanted the opportunity to say, all right, let's take it apart. What do we do? So credentialing is a really big one because.
I mean, they are educators. Robin DiAngelo is teaching people her perspective. Robin DiAngelo is teaching people her ideas. That's what makes her an educator. She's teaching her perspective. She's teaching her ideas. I'm an educator because I'm teaching people my perspective. I'm teaching people my ideas. One of the reasons the left wins and is so far ahead of everyone else is the left has not only do they own academia, but the left has a metric ton of educators. The left has people out there all the time teaching their perspective and teaching their ideas. They do it in college classrooms. They do it in K through 12 schools. They do it in coffee shops. They do it in bookstores. They do it at conferences. They do it at events. They have all sorts of educators at different levels out there educating people about their ideas. This is why they win. This is what the right needs to get better at. Honestly. The right sucks at educating people. The right sucks at teaching people. What the right does is they make fun of people, they attack people, they call people names. If they don't agree with them, they mob them, they cancel them, they do every single thing except for teach. And then they complain that people don't agree with them, or they complain that people take the left side. Well, the left is out there teaching, the right's out there whining, you know? And it's like, if more people were out there teaching their ideas, I mean, I think a lot of people can get better at this. It was a hard slog for me to figure out the dissident right-wing perspective. It was hard because I was attacked by the dissident right for years. I was doxxed. I was harassed for a long ass time. And then even when I met people that were nicer on the dissident right, like, it was like pulling teeth to get them to tell me what they think. And I would say, just tell me what your perspective is. Just tell me how you see the world. Explain to me how you came to these conclusions. And it was like, it was literally like pulling teeth for me. It was something I had to want and I had to work for. And it was like, most people are just not going to do the work to get that type of information. They're just not. And so if people are not out there teaching their point of view, teaching their perspective in a way that people can understand, listen, people shit on me because I make things so simple. Like Mio wants to shit on me for like the books that I've written or the books that I recommend to people. But I'm like, yo, I'm able to break stuff down really, really simply to help people understand it. What the fuck are you doing? You're making fun of people for not being smart enough for you. Most people are really effing busy. Most people don't have the time for this stuff. There aren't enough people breaking it down in simple, easy enough to understand terms. And that goes across every single belief system, right? So yeah, Robin DiAngelo is an educator, whether people like it or not. All right, guys, I think that's about enough of Robin DiAngelo I want to listen to today. We have about 20 minutes until my community Zoom call. As a reminder, if you would like to join me, Mondays we do a little bit of a shorter stream. Well, bro, they're winning, you're losing. They're winning, you're losing. They're winning, you're losing. You're losing badly. I'll just keep saying this. They're winning, you are losing. So it doesn't really matter if you respect her or not. It really doesn't. It doesn't matter if she's lying. She is out there teaching people what she believes. And because she's out there doing that and you're not, that is why she's kicking your ass. Doesn't matter if what she's saying is true. Doesn't matter at all. Yeah, conservatives think you're questioning their whole being. Yeah, ain't that the truth, Azerwang? Ain't that the truth? Anyway, no, we're not doing penguins, Trendlin. Absolutely not. Guys, that's going to wrap it up for today. I usually do a shorter stream on Monday because it's 7 p.m. on Mondays. The Monday community Zoom call is back. I know I've canceled it the last several weeks because there's been other stuff going on, but we will have a community Zoom call starting at 7 p.m. You can get access to it by heading over to my Substack, which is Carlin, KARLYN.substack.com. What you want to do is go to the Unwoke Roundup newsletter in the very middle of the screen right here. I will pop this link in the chat in case people want to join us. If not, that's cool too. And what you do once you sign up as a supporter is you scroll all the way down to the bottom. And underneath this red box, you're going to find the Zoom link. I will also be posting that in locals. We will be doing the call starting at 7. When is something controversial? Well, I'm thinking about doing one later tonight. Maybe it would be after Nick's show. So depending on what time Nick Fuentes goes live. But I might be doing a something controversial tonight. So I'm just going to put the link for my Rumble channel in the chat. You guys can now, of course, subscribe on Kick, apparently, if you want to. Kick.com/CarlinB. So you can subscribe to me on Rumble. Now I've got streaming up on Kick, so you can subscribe there as well. So I might be doing that a little bit later tonight. If you would like to be notified that I'm going live, make sure you sign up for the Telegram group, follow the Telegram channel, and I will send out a notification. I will also be sending out a notification on Twitter when I'm ready to go live. If I end up going live, I'm not making any guarantees. I am a little bit tired, so we'll have to see what time Nick's show ends because I'm not going to overlap with his show. But yeah, there might be something controversial later. If not, you can always catch it on demand. And that's all I have for today, guys. So that's all I have. I'm off to go do my community Zoom call. I hope some of you will join me at 7 p.m. in about 15 minutes. And if not, I will see you either later tonight for something controversial, or I will see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Take care, guys. We'll see you soon. Bye.